who has a background with the University of the West Indies knows that the academic writing courses that are offered are generally referred to as the foundation language courses. So that's what I'm talking about. But why did I want to focus so particularly on the affective factors? Sorry, let me move that off my screen. Well, it's because the research shows affective factors play a critical role in the success of any learning endeavor. There's a well-established link between attitudes and student achievement. Now, some people say that the link between these two is actually motivation, because your attitude can determine your motivation. Your motivation then is what actually determines what action you take. How much effort do you put into something? What behaviors do you exhibit in order to get to that end result of the best possible learning outcome? So how did I go about conducting the research? Well, I primarily used a survey which was modified from an existing test battery on attitudes and motivation, specifically for language learning. So I modified it to suit the present context. And a total of 667 students completed this survey, which was administered online. In addition to that, I interviewed 50 students, 8 of the academic writing course instructors, and 12 lecturers from 4 faculties. For the purposes of this paper, though, I only used 28 of the original 42 closed-ended items. So I used a Likert scale, and we're going to be looking more so at the following 4 subscales that you see on the screen: self-confidence in academic writing, attitude to academic English and academic writing, attitude to academic writing courses, and also perceptions on the practical use of the courses. Now, this last one is what takes us a little bit more into the motivation side of it. So for the results, I decided not to present them exactly in the way that they are in the chapter, because you will see that as I do a lot of interviews, but it's quite heavy on statistics as well. So I don't want to get into that for the purpose of this presentation. What I decided to do instead was to tell the story of the results by using interview excerpts. We're going to start with 2 excerpts from the interviews with lecturers, one of them from the Faculty of Social Sciences, and the other one is one of the academic writing course instructors. Let's see what they have to say. Students have severe difficulty with writing, structure, spelling, having a beginning, a middle, and an end to an essay. English really seems to be a foreign language for many students. Punctuation is a thing of the past. I'm surprised they got past CSEC English sometimes. When I get a paper now without a lot of problems, I notice it, rather than it being the other way around. The second quotation: at the beginning of semester, students will sometimes come in and ask why they have to do the course. They say, they're not English students, why should they have to do English? They say they don't need it. So these comments were very much representative of the viewpoints which were expressed generally by the lecturers interviewed. And they suggest a few very important things to us right now. Number one, they definitely indicate there are some challenges that students are facing when it comes to writing and academic writing. It also starts, though, to give us an idea of what some of the attitudes to the students are. So let's find out now what the students really had to say. I selected only 3 of the quotations. 2 of them are from the Faculty of Pure and Applied Sciences and 1 from the Faculty of Social Sciences. So let's read what the students had to say. A lot of what I learned was not especially, sorry, I can't see that because it's giving me this notice. Sorry, was not especially relevant to me and my major, math. I haven't had to use anything I learned yet. And truthfully, I don't see myself using anything I learned. Second one, it was okay. Truthfully, I didn't pay much attention to it. I got a grade 1 in CSEC English and CAPE Communication Studies, so I felt I had done it all before. I think it would be beneficial if you hadn't done those courses or had done them but not done well. But for me, it was just a waste. And finally, in my opinion, English for academic purposes is believe that they're more important to some persons. That is, those persons who left school without being adequately qualified. It's the responsibility of the university to find out which persons are in need of the English courses, as opposed to forcing everyone to do them. So again, these comments very much told the story of the themes that came out of the student interviews. Students, and even more so from certain faculties than others, did question, they expressed doubt as to the value of the courses for them. Others acknowledged the benefits of the courses, but they stressed that only those students who have to do them should have to take them. But the problem, though, is that so many students had that exact view. Very much the opinion was, well, yeah, the courses are important, but they're not important for me, they're important for them. And too many students said that to ignore, because we know it can't actually be quite so simple. So, to summarize the main findings discussed in the chapter, we established that the students' writing overall is below the preferred standard. I also found that students possessed moderate self-confidence in academic writing. They possessed moderate attitudes to academic English and academic writing. Statistically significant differences were found relating to the age of the student, sex of the student, and the faculty to which the student belonged. And the findings were supported by the interviews. So just a few conclusions that I wanted to discuss briefly. We have to at all times remember the language context of the Caribbean, this middle space that we exist in, where we're English language speakers, but not necessarily standard English language speakers. Developing language awareness is therefore going to be critical in improving the situation. In my opinion, there is a need for more than one academic writing course to be taken, even if they pass the English language proficiency test, even if they got a grade 1 in CSEC English. Also, one of the ways that maybe we could improve the students' attitude and motivation is if a discipline-specific writing course could be offered, perhaps in each faculty. That way we wouldn't have comments anymore with pure and applied students saying, well, this isn't helpful to me. This doesn't teach me how I'm supposed to write about biology or chemistry or social work in the Faculty of Social Sciences. In addition, it's critical, really, definitely one thing that came out of the interviews was that the criteria promoted in these academic writing courses is quite often not actually valued when it comes to lecturers grading papers. They often said, well, I'm not an English teacher, so no, I'm not going to grade their paper for that. And then finally, it might be an idea to consider administering attitude surveys, an informal survey perhaps at the start of the courses that would let the instructors know, okay, I can find out where the students stand in terms of their competence. We established that that's a good idea for the beginning of almost any course, but these affective factors, these are quite often not included to the same degree. And these affective factors, again, cannot be underestimated because these are what propel the student to act how they do, to behave, to exhibit certain study behaviors. And that's ultimately what has an impact on their success. So I'd like to end now with an excerpt from the chapter. The moderate attitudes and extrinsic motivation observed in this study can be changed, but only after establishing a general picture of the prevailing attitudes and motivational factors of students. Research into attitude change suggests that two of the best ways to achieve change in this area are increasing the language awareness of the students and by encouraging new positive experiences in the language or in writing. I know that's something that any and every tertiary level academic literacy practitioner would want to do, and it is possible, but we have so much to be aware of in this journey. So thank you so much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for a lot of stuff to chew on and to think about. And we have, I think, probably a little bit more than 5 minutes because I think you gave us a little bit of your time. So the questions can be given a little bit more time. I don't know if there are any that have been put in the chat yet. If there are any, I would ask Raymond to just read them for me. But while you're looking at that, Raymond, I do have questions I want to start off with. Okay, the survey that you did and the person that you interviewed from in terms of academic staff and students, these students were they at the open campus or the Cave Hill campus, or was it across campuses?
Oh,
Where
my
did,
apologies. I did so many different slides and then all couldn't make the cut.
right,
So the research was conducted at the Cave Hill campus. So it was
okay,
undergraduate students of Cave Hill campus only.
okay. And when was it conducted? I'm asking you that because you mentioned that perhaps what would be important is to look at, to have courses that are academic writing in their specialist courses. And I know at UE, certainly at Mona, we do. At Cave Hill, I think there are also some of the academic writing courses that are geared towards different disciplines.
Yeah, so
Right.
at Cave Hill, there are some that are geared more towards certain disciplines, but even when I spoke to the students in those particular faculties, they still said that no, like, so one of the rhetorics, I believe, was more so encouraged for students in, I think, two faculties, maybe social sciences and pure and applied, but I stand corrected on that. And overwhelmingly, their attitude to that was still, it's so general, it's not really giving me what I need. So when I'm talking about discipline specific courses, what I really mean is something that is done by the faculty itself, not done by the foundation language team then. I
Okay.
think that would actually do quite a lot. But to answer your question of when the research was conducted, it was conducted a good few years ago now. It was part of my MPhil study. And at the time that I conducted the research, let me try to remember what it was. The courses were pass fail and they were not counting to your GPA. And that
Okay.
was changed shortly after. So that would give you an idea of when it was.
Okay.
Because when I was writing the chapter, I was aware that it had changed and that they were now counting towards the GPA, but it was not like that at the time of research. And that is something that students had commented on as well, that they felt that if it didn't count to the GPA, they didn't have to put that much effort into it.
Okay. All right. That clears it up. Yes. Okay. Any other questions for Melissa?
If anyone is interested, I'd be happy to volunteer so as I said, I did run a number of statistical procedures. I did the one-way ANOVA, I did a two-way ANOVA, and then depending on those results, I did some post hoc tests. And some of the things that came out, which one of the slides mentioned, is that statistically significant differences were observed, for example, for sex of student. So what I found was that female students had a more positive attitude to the overall concept of academic English. Some students kind of freely admitted actually that they struggled with this concept. What does this even mean? I speak English already. What are you telling me, right? It was also found for faculty of student. The truth is, and it almost pains me because in research, we don't like to go along with stereotypes, but the truth was that the results definitely pointed towards pure and applied students being the most resistant to these courses. And this was something that the interviews with the foundation language course instructors, quite often they actually just volunteered. I didn't even bring it up, but they volunteered. You know, the truth is we do see differences according to the faculty that the student is in. And pure and applied question us the most. Why do they have to do this? They don't think they should have to do this. And then age of student was also quite important. So what we found was that with self-confidence, the students under 30 had a higher self-confidence in terms of their ability to write using academic English, like academic writing. But the older students, the over 30s, were the ones who were actually the most open-minded, like they had the more positive attitude towards the like the courses in general, really. So not just the concept of academic English, but to the courses themselves. They were able to see the value of the courses and appreciate the value of the courses much more so than the younger students. And again, this was something which came up in the interviews with the instructors, because they said oftentimes the younger students come in and they think, I can skate by. I don't need to do that much work. But the older ones, and especially the ones who are already working and see the value of being able to write well in a work context, in a more formal context, they really understood the value so much more. And you could see the difference that it had in their actual effort that they put into the course.
Okay, thank you. I see 2 hands raised. So I think Charlene, you were first, and then after Charlene, then George.
Well, when she made the distinction between the younger and the older generation, I kind of like decided not to ask. It really was about the perception of the students to the language itself rather than to the courses in the language. I don't know if there's anything you can say about how they perceive the importance, the value of having English itself. Was there anything in the research that spoke to that?
So in the chapter, so the results section is quite heavy, right? Because there's a lot of statistics that I'm reporting on. So the overview that I just gave you of what stood out, that was for those areas that returned statistically significant results. There were certain things that I ran. So for some of the tests, for example, they do something, you look for interaction effect. And the age of the student, if I recall correctly, but it is in the chapter, age of student did not have a significant interaction effect on that more generalized concept of academic English. It's only sex of student that had a statistically significant impact on that. But that question of under 30 and over 30, it didn't actually bring up anything in the test.
We are over 5 minutes.
Okay, can we have one more? Can we just have this question, Raymond, and then we move on?
It's your show. I'm just the time.
Keep it short and sweet, George.
Oh, okay. I will. Thank you, Dr. Daesh. Melissa, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to know if in your data collection or in your interviews, I don't know if I missed some of the beginning, so maybe this was addressed. If I wanted to know if it was brought out at all, the value of the courses beyond writing itself. So things like giving presentations, things like being able to, other kinds of things that require effective communicative skills. So not just writing, or did
Right.
the value just come out in, students only seeing the value in writing versus in public speaking or doing interviews or
Okay.
other kinds of communicative contexts?
Right, I follow. Okay, so again, this chapter is based on research that I had done for my MPhil. So I actually scaled it down to fit in the chapter. The broader study looked at attitudes and motivation, as well as elements of self-confidence, self-esteem. And then it looked at, as you were saying, not just writing. Because this book was about writing, I really zeroed in more so on that. But there were lots of discussions with students about, for example, did they feel confident when they had to give presentations in class? And then what about outside of class? Do they think that these courses would be valuable to them in the future for doing exactly what you're saying, for speaking, not just writing, but for speaking, for presentations, formal or informal? And then in the interviews, that absolutely did come up. So what I showed you, the snippets that I showed you, were definitely telling the story of the major themes that emerged. But absolutely, there were students who were saying how useful they were, or that they believed they would be very useful in developing these other skills. It's not just writing, it's speech, it's confidence, it's everything else like that. So it did come out.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Melissa. Well, Melissa will be around for the 15 minutes at the end when we have the plenaries, I hope. And so if there are any more questions, I know I still have one or two, but we're going to, in the interest of time and giving everybody a fair share of time. Once again, thanks, Melissa. Very interesting and lots to discuss. And we're going to move on to our second presenter, Tyrone Ali, who is going to be speaking on solving problems and signaling potential in writing program administration at UWI St. Augustine. Now, Tyrone has been the coordinator of the Academic Literacy Program, which was formerly the English Language Foundation program in St. Augustine since 2001. So that's a good 20 years. I think he just stepped down last year. And He, in that capacity, he oversaw the transformation of the entire academic writing program from a traditional face-to-face format to a web-enabled blended learning paradigm using current technologies and 21st century educational strategies. He also spearheaded 2 quality assurance reviews of the unit to ensure that it strives with the wider university strategic plans. He was a 1993 recipient of the President's Gold Medal for Teacher Education in Trinidad and Tobago in 1993, as I said, and his research and publication interests are masculinity studies, sociocultural studies of the Global South, literature in English, and tertiary level writing by Caribbean students. Welcome, Tyrone, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Before I actually begin, can you indicate to me if you are seeing my screen? It's a title screen on a PowerPoint.
Yes, yes, we are.
Okay, great, nice, great. So let's begin. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to Caroline and the wider CATALP executive for this invitation. And hats off to Vivette, Raymond, and Brianne as well for their very, very innovative and insightful work on Creole composition. My chapter really addresses, oh boy, let's just see what happens here. Okay, yeah, my chapter addressed how I, as the then coordinator of the academic writing program at UWI St. Augustine, have inherited, approached, and resolved writing program administration problems and challenges over the last decade and a half. So it is a personal reflective account that I write and I share from the perspective of having coordinated the unit for 14 years. And my overall aim in this chapter has been to maximize appreciation for the linguistic and educational evolution of the writing program at St. Augustine with a view to ensuring quality while securing upper management's financial investment in the program for years to come. Forget that spelling error, please. So what is the operational context that I am working with? I started as a part-time person in 2001. I became full-time in 2004. And 2 short years after, I was made coordinator of this program. What did I inherit? Of course, I inherited an Anglophone Caribbean-based tongue. I'm not going into that discussion because Melissa went to length and we share that commonality there, as I'm sure we share with the other campuses there in terms of a Creole language continuum of our speakers. And what I actually inherited would have been 2 courses, just 2, English for academic purposes and academic writing for different disciplines. That's all. But over time, this would have evolved and I would have spearheaded, introduced, streamlined, and worked with a team to actually create other courses, in as much as 7 academic writing courses to date, 3 language workshops, 3 annual entry proficiency tests, an annual student body of 4,000, just 2 full-time lecturers. And if it denote any tone of exasperation here on my part, it is intentional because we have 4,000 students per year with 2 full-time lecturers. And the university preaches parity and harmonization, but that is a dream for us at St. Augustine. When I consider Mona, for example, having, I think, I can't remember, is it 20 full-time lecturers or something like that, right? And we have 7 full-time instructors, 13 part-time lecturers, 5 tertiary level institutions. And of course, apart from all of that, we have been perceived over the years to be the bastard child. So we would always be allocated fewer resources, physical resources, human resources, and of course we inherit all the blame for everything that goes wrong in writing and the writing competencies of the student. So as the coordinator, that is what I inherited, and that this slide here shows what I left when I demitted the coordinator's office last year. The thrust of my overall coordination has been marked by 2 things really. Right? Basically, it would be 2 major waves of transition over the past 14 years. The initial wave related to a modernization of its aims, pedagogy, assessment practices, and quest for harmonization with its sister campuses. In 2004, when I was given the mantle to coordinate, we had English for academic purposes, a semester-long course, and academic writing for different disciplines, a semester-long course. The entire nature of these courses were pencil and paper. There were two assessments, a 50% coursework assessment where the students came in, sat a test, left, and earned a maximum of 50%. And then there was a final examination where we repeated that exercise, but with a different thrust, a different question, or a different focus. It was basically pencil and paper, basically lecturer style approach, right? Absolutely nothing to do with technology other than printed, not even a printed book, but handouts. And that characterized the entire program. The other dimension of transition was itself two-pronged. First, the focus on a phased adoption of a blended learning technique characterized by currency of educational technology. And secondly, an adaptation to the noticeable shift in written communicative competencies of the incoming student body. And both things work simultaneously, right? We tried to move from that actual traditional kind of conservative approach to language teaching and instruction and learning to incorporate educational technology and match strides with what was the best practice industry out there, actually in the region and in the wider global south, as well as informed by the global north institutions. But also we discern a change in the communicative competencies of the incoming student body. Something if you want to look at it along a continuum, we would say lesser prepared or lesser able. So what were the major problems? The sheer size of St. Augustine's student body, reading academic writing courses, coupled with the limited human resources delivering such courses. Obviously, you would see we have to grapple with everything. Language competencies, how the course is perceived. And Melissa, your addendum here in terms of what you would have discovered with the affective domain and how students would have perceived. But I will go beyond and say staff as well in other faculties kind of, relegated academic writing as an also-ran status, okay? It's not anything that they should be focusing on. In fact, they actively encourage the students not to read the courses until the final semester of their final year. Worse than that, sometimes when you finish the final year, but you have just that summer before you graduate, then do our courses. So coordinating this program becomes a mammoth exercise. There was one program administrator and I had responsibility for basically everything. Academic planning, preparation. I also had to coordinate courses myself and eventual student throughput. Not to mention that we also had to grapple with tertiary learning institutions in St. Vincent, the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and of course, Tobago, all right? And all of that is without increased resources. So look at 2003, 2004. This would have been just an example of some dated statistics, the number of students reading one course. This is just one course and the pass rate. And look at the years afterwards and the pass rate, more or less fluctuating in the 50s. The first year of my coordination, really, I implemented certain measures such that in 2007, 2008 saw a higher rate of increase. So what then were these measures? What were the problems and what were the intervention? And therefore, I come to what will be the potential of our program. So let me rush through now because I know time is against us. We're dealing with a particular student body, some of whom flout the need for these courses and others who think by actually professing a Caribbean Standard English, we are kind of humiliating or having their native tongue belittled, which wasn't the case. We are also dealing with a millennial student body, one who is steeped in new technologies and who is exceedingly skilled, right, in the social media, if not on my e-learning platform. Using all of that, we had to recalibrate our approach in terms of courses, in terms of assessment, in terms of teaching approaches, in terms of support measures, in terms of meeting the student where they are, in terms of actually lobbying to ensure our writing center was there to be used by undergrad and even postgrad students. The actual teaching staff also would have been addressed. We have 2 lecturers at St. Augustine for 4,000 students, right? But we also have 7 instructors. The thing is, these instructors only started in 2008 and only 2. In the past decade, we had an additional 2, additional 1, and we only have 7, right? So we have 7 full-time instructors who are on a teaching track, and we have 2 lecturers who are on a research track. We have to grapple with everything, including the English language proficiency tests, for which we get no additional resources or remuneration or even a lessening in duties, right? So basically, we had to launch training and development sessions, bring us up to par, bring us to where we are with the student body in terms of the technology. I did what I could have done as the coordinator, which I understand afterwards was illegal, which is to give every instructor and the other lecturer a research day, a personal research day. So really they work 4 days a week. We ensured we have a democracy with timetables, so everyone gets their preferred courses and classes on time, right? And we also try to allow instructors to do some course coordination so that that could be documented in their CV as going beyond what is expected. The third major area, the final one, is the curriculum. We felt the best way to move forward was to liaise with the sister campuses and glean from them. Cave and Mona had been most instrumental over the past decade and a half. We moved from 2 courses to 7 courses, ensuring the 5 additional courses spoke to the disciplines. So writing across the disciplines could be greater achieved, right? We got rid of the old school foci and got on band with a new currency of language teaching. We try to have our exercises, our assessment, our topics, our actual content show pragmatic value. So we will actually relate all our examples, all our content to what the student is experiencing in real life today. In fact, case in point, the last semester, we had a heavy focus on COVID-19 and all the issues associated with it, right?
Okay, no, I want to give you 2 more minutes to wind up because we're a little bit ahead of time.
Sure, I'll take that 2 minutes.
So I'll
Right.
take it up in the next 2 minutes. Sure.
Thank you. In this regard, we ensured the curriculum had greater relevance in ways not seen before. An assessment moved away from a traditional one-sitting test to multiple forms of assessment using the technology, online quizzes, cooperative learning, individual learning, oral language skills, group work, that kind of thing. And we partnered with other units like our library, like other faculties. We had meetings with them to sell our mantra, and actually they had some buy-in. We also incorporated guest speakers, and we moved from writing across the curriculum to communication across the curriculum. These are the statistics that are most recent for last year. If you look at the red, you will see the percentage increase in the passes in our courses, right? And that was semester 1. And I know I'm rushing, but this is semester 2. Focus on the red and you will see the percentage increases. A far cry from the 50% I inherited when I started the coordination. So we know what we did was sound. And I leave you now with the potential to build. A solid foundation has been established and the current coordinator can build on that. We have upper management buying into our plans to increase our resources. We have wider campus buy-in because we merge our university's AAA strategic plan with the actual mantra of our academic writing program. So they see relevance, interest, and marketability. Our 2 quality assurance review exercises point to the need for resources. So that is something that is concrete that we can lobby with. We have communication across the curriculum paradigm being established with other faculties. And we think there's the potential to have additional courses at levels 2 and 3. We want to interface with CXC in a more grounded way. We want to build on partnership with research, both in St. Augustine's unit as well as across the Caribbean with other sister campuses. And we even think that we are well poised to begin our own academic writing journal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tyrone. Lots to mull over. You've been there for a while, so I know you really had to compress everything to get that into the 10-minute presentation. Okay, open the floor for questions or comments in terms of what Tyrone just expounded on. I would just like to, maybe I would start by just saying that what comes out to me, perhaps most in terms of what you just detailed, was the role of the writing program administrator in terms of activism and advocacy, because you end up by saying after, you know, how many years you did get wider campus buy-in and there was significant change, but there's still the need for much more resources to achieve your goals. So my question is, will you and your team and your really be doubling down on that to make the changes necessary? I mean, do you have a plan? I guess to a certain extent, a plan for advocacy and a political plan sometimes in terms of, you know, making those significant changes that we know will make a difference to the writing programs.
Well, basically, I think, and I have to, I'm in the position where I can gauge progress from 14 years to now and all through the years. And I can say there's a subculture of buy-in already. And that was painstakingly established, okay? We want to capitalize on that. And the plan that you mentioned would be actually using our recent quality assurance review findings, okay? Because as you know, that is joint with international and internal staff of the university from the other campuses and all of that business community. So that actually would be the springboard to capitalize on, because it sort of validates what we have found. It builds using their own recommendations, and it is substantial. A quality assurance review finding, a report, is the actual document that can stand up to scrutiny, and it is what everything will be predicated on. So moving forward, I think a joint approach using that quality assurance review report, the most recent one being 2019, coupled with the university's strategic plan. The actual strategy then would be to marry both, to show upper management how what we want is not a wish list, but rather very practical to achieve the very aims that you have listed in your vision and your mission. So I think if we move logically and based on that empirical evidence coming out of Creole, I don't think that it is possible for them to say no, other than they simply wanting to say no. But I think based on where we have been to where we are, it's increasingly more difficult for them to say no.
You know.
This is barring the whole pandemic issues with financial matters, though. I'm talking about outside of that.
Okay. All right.
So that's the plan.
Okay. Thank you very much. George with a hand up, and then Ababio. Unmute your mic, George.
All right, yes, thank you, Dr. Daesh. Thank you, Taryn, for your presentation and insight. I wanted to know, you mentioned the importance of cross-campus collaboration between the different sites. I wanted to know which sort of strategies or techniques or modes of collaboration you found most useful, and moving forward, what others or what else you think could be done to strengthen and to increase progress generally across the board.
Since 2005 to last 2019, we have had multiple cross-campus meetings, right? We've had a session just to look at the English language proficiency tests, right? We've had sessions to look at the content of our courses. We've had sessions to look at needs and resources, that kind of thing. And I have felt the most effective has been those face-to-face interaction, because, I mean, let's just personalize this. What we are doing here, if we were in a face-to-face environment, there could have been much more discussion, meeting afterwards, right? Informal sessions, that kind of thing. A face-to-face opens doors for more than what was intended on an agenda of a meeting. So I think the most practical ones, most meaningful, most instrumental would have been those face-to-face meetings. Outside of that, we've had some online interaction, and to a lesser extent, we've relied heavily on email correspondence, right? I think we also had some WhatsApp chats going at some point in time, but I think all of that allows for currency of information, right? And an immediate sharing of plans and ideas, that kind of thing. But what came out of all these series of face-to-face and online interaction and using the technology would have been a closer narrowing of the gap among the campuses in terms of moving towards a similar ELPT, English Language Proficiency Test, if not in actual questions, at least in principle of what are the skills to be examined, what are the overall aims, what are the objectives. And those things to also shape our courses to the extent where I think University Council would have established cross-campus reviews on the courses with a view to changing all foundation courses, the different 7 across the campuses. I'm not talking about English courses, I'm talking about foundation in general, Caribbean civilization, science, med, and technology. And what came out of it was an acceptance and an appreciation of what all the campuses do regarding foundation English courses in an academic literacies program. In fact, the academic literacies program title was born out of the most recent cross-campus deliberations. So there would have been development, but moving forward, we would want to build on that. I would say financial issues would hamper things a lot, but it does still allow for whoever would be the coordinators at the various campuses to initiate online meetings and online visits, that kind of thing, moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Amma, last question before we move on.
Yes, Tyrone, I just want to commend you and your team for what you have achieved with such limited resources, staffing, and everything. I found myself actually giving you a round of applause. Now, my question is, how important was your writing center in helping you to achieve?
The writing center was used by me as a negotiating kind of platform. And you see, I have to say, I mean, it's not in another setting, maybe in your neck of the woods, whoever might be participant here might think it's easier and they are not involved. Not so at St. Augustine. At St. Augustine, let's accept as a given, everything has to be a fight by the coordinator for resources. All right. I know we had a 2011 quality assurance review, and they recommended the addition of 5 full-time lecturers. Do you know how many we got after 2011? That's right, 0. Okay. In 2019, there was the recommendation for additional instructors and lecturers. So far, 0. But let's give Jack his jacket. The pandemic hit, financial issues, that kind of thing. But we could pick up that fight in time to come. The Writing Center came about in 2008. It was the brainchild of a former dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, but no one wanted to pick it up. So it was during the summer program, I approached him and I said, let's try it as a pilot exercise. We will do our reports, that kind of thing. And based on what we see, we could perhaps institutionalize it. So he gave me the go ahead. Again, an instructor among us volunteered to help with it. So together I worked with her. Mind you, this is a lecturer who's coordinator and she's an instructor, but no reduction in terms of other duties, right? Or existing duties, and no additional resources. So we just tried it because you see, the aim is to assist our students, right? And the aim is to improve the image of our unit, which has never been seen as something, vital in the campus community. So we did it, and we wrote all our reports, did the statistics and all of that. And for semester 1, 2008, we started with an institutionalized writing center, but albeit face-to-face on a very phased basis. There was clamoring for the services gradually over the next few years, to the extent where we made representation to have an assigned member of staff. We never got that, but what we were allowed was to have an instructor to have some duties replaced by part-time people so she could pick up the slack.
Okay, I think Tyrone's, I thought it might have been mine, but he seems to be frozen.
You are
We seem to be having some problems here. Clover, could you check? I saw a message a while ago to say that the host had muted everybody. Not sure what's happening there. Are you hearing me?
Caroline, I think it is your Wi-Fi,
might-
so I'm going to take.
Okay.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, my Wi-Fi is definitely acting up. I think Amos was the last question for Tyrone. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, so we will have, as I say, about 15 minutes at the end after Clover and Jessica have and fielded their questions to come back for any other questions. So thanks so much, Tyrone. Moving us from the whole affective area to the administrative and coordinating one, which of course is such an important part of that multifaceted role of the academic literacy practitioner and the writing program administrator particularly. Now we want to invite Jessica and Clover to come and speak to us on their book chapter titled Academic Literacy Facilitators Framework for Self-Empowerment. I know we're all excited about that, since we oftentimes feel quite powerless. Although I must say that Tyrone's presentation just showed how much we can actually achieve.
Yeah.
Just a quick bio for Clover is head of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences in the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies at the University of Technology in Kingston here. She's an associate professor there of academic literacy and communication. She teaches courses in academic literacy at graduate and undergraduate levels. And as a trained teacher of English, she has served as an external examiner, as well as taught courses in Jamaican English language teacher training institutions. And her research interests and her publications have mainly been on language teaching policy, attitudes to students' language use, along with student empowerment in the English language classroom. Jessica Campbell-Dodge is also at the University of Technology, where she's a lecturer in academic literacies with a focus on exposition and argument. She had presented on literary genres, eco-criticism, travel narratives, and poetry, specifically the post-colonial appropriation of language to establish national identity in female poets. Recently, she co-wrote a paper on the delivery of academic literacies in tertiary level Jamaican institutions that have been published, and she is the coordinator of the English language proficiency test at the university, at her university, and she has since August 2020 been the coordinator of the university's academic writing 2 program. Jessica also teaches part-time at UWI. Mona campus. So we have a joint authorship here and a joint presentation for Clover and Jessica.
Okay, thank you so much, Caroline. Clover, I'm going to ask you to share, please. Share your screen. Okay, so thanks again, Caroline, and thank you to Melissa and Tyrone who presented before, because certainly what we're going to be doing in this brief exposition of our chapter really builds on the kind of framework that they hat set that they really created. So as Carolyn outlined, our title is really Academic Literacies, Literacy Facilitators Framework for Self-Empowerment. So I'll just pause at the self-empowerment there, because as was outlined by both Melissa and Tyrone, there are a lot of really negative perceptions of the academic literacies program and of academic literacies within our context. So what we aim to do in this chapter is really to set out why it is that we need to be self-empowered as practitioners, because we are faced with several issues related to how we're perceived. And as well, if we want to really achieve anything, if we want to push forward, then we have to carve out a space for ourselves. So I'm going to really look at the context and a possible way forward. And then Clover will look at why we say the academic literacies approach is valuable, and also what are some of the demands that will then be on the academic literacy practitioner if we're going to really achieve a name for ourselves and a space for ourselves within the Caribbean post-secondary context.
Jessica, could you just put it on slideshow or Clover?
Yeah, Clover, I can't.
Oh, I thought it was on slideshow.
I don't think so.
All right, let me go back. Okay, so I stopped share. Share. Hold on, share screen. All right, are you seeing that now on slideshow?
That's good now.
Yeah, okay, so.
Okay,
right.
for me, it's blank, but yes, it's coming up. So the first thing that we said was that the the academic literacies practitioner and the academic literacies program is one that is largely undefined. By undefined, we mean there's no clear identity as to what we are about. Persons will be like, okay, so what do they really do? What does an academic literacy practitioner do? They're teachers of English. They're there to really correct the errors in our students' writing. So is that really what we're about? So we put forward in that chapter that because of this lack of identity as to who the academic literacies practitioner is, the issue becomes that we are not respected. There's a sense of unrecognition of our skills and abilities and the value that we bring to a university per se. So we are seen as, you know, that department, the general ed department over there. Okay, so they're here to serve us. They're here to help our students, but they have no role in and of themselves. So the idea that we're not specialists, we're not content area specialists, and therefore we have little value within the university space. Added to this is the whole idea that the general ed programs of which academic literacy is a part does not bring students into the university, right? Other content specific programs do. And as such, we're not seen as having monetary value. And because we do not have monetary value, then our voices aren't heard. And what happens as a result of that is that our programs do not get the kind of recognition that they need, and also they're poorly resourced. So poorly resourced, we have an issue with minimal resources being allocated, and I think Tyrone touched a lot on this in his presentation. So the issue of human resources, our classes are always really big. We have 20 to 25 students in a class, but we're vilified if at the end of that program, the students do not improve dramatically with respect to their writing skills. So we also have the issue where we have very few full-time lecturers, and these full-time lecturers serve, I think we have just about 14,000 students. And let's say we have 8,000 students for the year who is supposed to do academic writing 1 and 2, but we have just about what, 10 or 12 full-time lecturers. So with respect to developing material for presentation and so on, the human resources are very thin. In addition to that, the large class sizes coupled with the limited time allocated to this program or to these programs, we have like 2 programs for a university student's entire tenure. So they do 4 years, but we're given 2 13-week programs. And within this time, we're expected to really work miracles and issues that students had for the last 12, 15 years of their lives, we're supposed to solve within essentially 3-month period, which is really insufficient. So the timing also, we get like what, a 2-hour session each week with students, well, 2 hours tutorial, 1 hour lecture. And we get this for 2 courses throughout the university, the life of the students, but then our department is really vilified if the students do not perform well with respect to their rights. The other thing too is with respect to material, it isn't thought that we really need to be resourced. So Tyrone mentioned the whole issue of the writing department. We have a writing center at the University of Technology with the Self-Access Center, where we would love to have technological resources and so on, but we do not get this support because it isn't felt that what we do is valuable enough to deserve this. So what is the way forward then? We believe that it is important for us to really define who we are and what we do. We can't allow outsiders to define it for us. We have to say, okay, this is who we are. This is the value that we bring, and this is how we can best serve or help our students to develop capacities. So it's important for us to carve out a name and a space for ourselves to really say who we are and what we're about. And then also, it's important to create a framework for greater recognition. And this framework would mean that our voices do not exist only within the scope of the university, but we're seen and heard from outside of this, outside of the walls, as it were, of the university. So it's important to develop a voice, and it's important to allow our voices to be heard. So the need for advocacy would then develop. So Clover is now going to take us through the academic literacies approach and why it's important, and then she will develop a little bit more on the demands that would now be on our shoulders as what we can.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yes, okay, Clover, we're going to allow you to
for that.
Can you wrap up in 4 minutes? Yeah. Okay, so with
yeah. So the kinds of knowledge. And if we look at the name of the approach itself, it is in the plural, academic literacies. Because one of the things that Melissa mentioned was the fact that the students saw what we were doing as irrelevant very often in general classes, because we tend to push a single way of doing things. And Charlene will add a single language, because academic literacy is not about a language. English or French or Spanish. It is about the skills that you use for particular purposes. And so when we talk about academic literacies, we are acknowledging the fact that there is no single way of understanding, of creating, of composing, and of sharing our thoughts and our ideas. So academic literacies from a knowledge and skills viewpoint pushes that kind of philosophy, that understanding. Then there is an ideological frame to academic literacies as defined within the context that we are looking at it as. So it's a way of framing who you are. It's a way of being reflective and reflexive. It's a way of questioning. So should we just continue in the mode we are, as our university, what the institution is offering to our students who look in, knowing the issues that they have, right? And then no resources or not enough resources are created for them. So then let's look a little bit more on what the ideological frame of academic literacies would demand from us. So it's going to mean that we develop a spirit of critique and advocacy. Tyrone and his team said, no, this is not what our students need. Let us look at it and let us cry out. Let us do something. Very often we get so burdened with marking, with trying to get the students to pass, get them to write well, that we don't have enough energy left to critique and to advocate, because we keep on doing the same thing over and over and over. We are getting the same results, but then we are still trying, and then we are so tired, so exhausted, so burnt out that we can't do much else. So we have to pull back a bit. Who are the students? And then how can we go about trying to advocate so that these things are done at least within a range. You know, we again other things, trying to fix students, trying to fix their language rather than looking at the wider situation. We have to assist one another. We have to come and share. And this is what forums like this sets out to do. We are trying to develop a partnership, a togetherness. So we end here because I know I'm going to be told my time is up, but we want to leave with this. Let's come together, advocate, maybe in joint advocacy, we can get the institutions which work to see us as important shields within the institutions, so that we can help our students to move forward, not just to write a specific type of essay, but to build their academic literacies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clover and Tressica. It's a good note to end on, and I must say, I hope you're hearing me because my Wi-Fi is really coming and going. But I think that the three presentations really complemented each other quite nicely. And so we're going to open the floor now to some questions or comments for Tressica and Clover. George, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daesh. I know I'm asking a lot of questions today.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, I wanted to know about the thought process of developing programs like certificate programs, degree programs, training programs within the, I don't know, the writing section or the writing, because I think one of the issues that you kind of raised was that it's not seen as important because we're not, it's sort of an additional requirement when you're in your program to do these writing courses. So I'm wondering if developing a specific kind of, I don't know if it's a degree program or something in composition, rhetoric, writing, something along those lines. Do you think that kind of thing would be beneficial, or certificate programs, workshops, I don't know, those kinds of things?
Yes, absolutely. And if I may say that at the University of Technology, we're actually